Whakatakate hau ki te uru. Whakatakate hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta. Kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura. He tio. He huka. He hohu. Tihe mori ora. So good morning and welcome. I'll start with item 1, apologies. And I've got a number of apologies. So apologies for partial absence from Leanne and from Jake. An apology for an early departure from Pauline Cotter, and an apology for an early departure from James Goff, who's also joining us by Zoom this morning rather than being here in person. So I'm happy to move those apologies. Sam will second. All those in favour say aye. Against, that's carried. Item 2, declarations of interest. So we're just noting Mayor and Deputy Mayor Christchurch Foundation and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Davidson, Christchurch NZ Holdings. So that's 2 quarterly reports, and Sam MacDonald will be in the chair for those 2 items. Item 3, confirmation of previous minutes. I'm happy to move those minutes. Do I have a seconder? Sam will second. All those in favour say aye. Against, that's carried. Item 4, public forum. We've got no public forum contributions this morning. Item 5, deputations. We've got no deputations by appointment this morning. Item 6, presentation of petitions. There are none. So that then takes us straight to item 7, the key performance results for October 2021. So Peter Ryan would normally be presenting this. He is off sick today. Lynn, you're going to present this instead. So any introductory comments that you'd like to make, and then we'll move to some questions. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm very happy to present the performance report for October. I'll provide a brief summary and then very happy to answer any questions. So when we look at the overview, the overall community levels of service are up on the last year, but still quite just shy of the 85% target. So they're at 84%. We see the impact of COVID in a number of areas, first of all in visitor numbers and also in foregone revenue in rec and sport. There is a separate capital report, and Ruth Cable, my colleague, will be able to present on that, as will heads of service, so I will not cover that in detail in this session. We also have a separate financial report. Overall, from a performance perspective, our financial position is positive. Leah Scales will be presenting on that, so again, I won't take much time there. In relation to the bubble diagram, which is on the second page of the report, I'd just like to comment on the outliers in relation to transport and three waters. So in relation to transport exceptions, they relate to 2 things. One is the access to key destination types by walking and increasing the share of non-car modes, and also the resident survey. We have not undertaken the resident survey at the moment. That is due to come through in April, May, and according to a previously agreed approach, we are flagging as amber those things which have been amber last year, and until there is evidence that they will change, they will continue as amber. Likewise, for water supply, the exceptions relate to average consumption of drinking water, the percentage of real water loss, and also resident surveys. And for the same reason, we are flagging those amber for the moment, but the resident survey will in fact come through in April, May next year, and we will be in a better position to advise you. This reflects a relatively conservative approach. We would prefer to be transparent and reflect what we estimate performance to be in anticipation of evidence, rather than giving a falsely optimistic view at this point in the year. We are committed to putting mitigations in place for those levels of service that are not on track. This is reviewed on a monthly basis by the executive leadership team, and we had just such a discussion yesterday. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. So, I mean, clearly there are some COVID impacts in here, which are called out well in the report. Thanks very much for the introduction. And any issues around the supply chain cost escalation or substitution issues, we'll cover those off with Ruth in the capital report rather than here. So, any questions for Lynn on this report? Sarah?
Kia ora, Lynn. You may not be able to address that, but do you know why we switched our 15-minute neighbourhood definition? Like, I know that this changing definition has been what's had some of the impact there, but it's changed the number of sort of kilometres per hour that people will walk.
Right. No, I'm sorry, I'm not able to address that, but what I can do is take that and get the relevant information, come back to you.
Yeah, because it's gone from, was it 5 to 4 kilometres an hour or something like that. Lynette's here.
Perfect, thank you.
I can't answer it though. Sorry, but I can say, look, we're looking to do a little update on the 15-minute neighbourhood. Put the links into the report in the next UDAT report, so we can address that question in the next UDAT report, which is next week.
That would be really cool. And yeah, when that's addressed, can we just look at the ability for people to not just walk but bike as well?
That's what they've done. Both the maps look at them. So that it's 15 minutes. So there's two maps, one that looks at walking and one that looks at biking.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yanni.
Okay. I see in the rec and events, obviously, we've had an impact with COVID where a number of our events have been cancelled. At the same time, we've also got the community trying to organise a number of vaccine events. And I just wondered whether we can give any support as an organisation to supporting community-led vaccination events to try and increase the rates of vaccination in the areas that have low vaccination rates.
So yes, we already do a number of support activities, and in particular when the campaign for 90% for Canterbury was launched, Council was very, very active in working with community groups and other organisations, including all CCOs, to get the message out. So we have been very extensively involved in promotion and also working with community organisations to support them in initiatives that they are taking to support vaccination rates.
So, okay, it's just that I did put the question in a few weeks ago around whether we had a resource to make available to community groups, and I was told that we don't, and that it was a matter for the CDHB. But I'm just aware that a number of groups have held vaccination events, and they're also dealing with a myriad of other things on their day-to-day basis. And we've got event staff that obviously are having events that aren't being held. So I just wondered whether we could do a little bit more in that space. But yeah.
What I can do is talk to the community support teams. I think what we assessed was that the most valuable and impactful thing that we could do as council was to enhance and multiply the communication and awareness because of the nature of our resources. But I take your point that there may well be some additional things that we can do on the ground with community organisations. So I will pick that up with the relevant head of service.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Aaron.
Yeah, just on the bubble diagram, it says it's an overview of performance of the top 10 activities, and if you looked at that, you go economic development's doing really, really well, because it sits at the top. But it's only the money budgeted and the money spent, isn't it? It's not the actual outcome.
So
because we've still got the lowest GDP of all the main centres. So as a punter, you'd look at this and you go, "Oh, great! We must be doing really well." But then when you look at the numbers, we're not as good as we could potentially be.
I think this is a question of what we're trying to measure. So what this bubble diagram reflects is the actual levels of service. Many of those are delivered through Christchurch NZ, and they relate to quite specific activities. So it's not GDP growth or economic development in that broader sense. I haven't got them at the tip of my fingers, but the specific initiatives are things like working with business organisations to support entrepreneurial development, and also training and other elements of underpinning economic development rather than the overall GDP or other economic outcomes.
Right. Okay. So
that's why we are meeting the levels of service, but that doesn't necessarily correlate directly to the economic outcomes that you're referencing.
So we should be more careful of what levels of service we set, because you can do really well on something that doesn't have much impact.
I think that's a valid reflection and something we need to bear in mind across all levels of service when we're looking to establish activity plans for the next LTP.
Great point. Thank you.
Thank you. Leanne.
Just following up on that, because one of the levels of service that sits behind economic development is the innovation ecosystem, which has been highly successful, but it isn't going to produce the immediate outcomes that's going to support businesses and their growth trajectory from early startup all the way through to, you know, quite significant companies. And the model's very successful, not just here, but internationally. So we wouldn't want to undermine that work by setting a level of service that can't be, an outcome that can't be measured instantly.
Yeah. So I think that's a very valid point, because when I've talked to Christchurch NZ, their vision and the impact they're having is over decades.
Yeah.
And so we need to make an investment in the short term to grow those businesses, to ensure that, in fact, that entrepreneurial ecosystem is adequately supported. So what we're looking in the levels of service is a bit of an interim measure. How are we tracking in relation to that overall goal? But we're not going to be able to necessarily meet that on an annual basis.
But also, I think one of the things that I noticed when I went and visited the different elements of the ecosystem is that every single one was in partnership with another. So ARA, Canterbury University, which you might know about yourself, and also the Ministry of Awesome, absolutely interconnected, sort of almost like a pipeline that supports innovation.
So I
mean, our contribution is only one element.
Yes.
And so if it's a three-legged stool with ARA and the Canterbury University, or a four-legged one with Ministry of Awesome, you take away one of the legs of the stool and the outcome might be undermined completely.
Yeah. It is very much a holistic approach,
Yeah.
and our levels of service are a microcosm of that bigger picture.
Yeah, thank you.
And in terms of the work that Christchurch NZ do, we've got to remember that our levels of service drive some of that activity, but the letter of expectation and the statement of intent drive a lot of the work that Christchurch NZ do outside of levels of service that would be reported here.
That's right.
Yeah. Jimmy.
On page 24 and 25, even the end of year, the survey result not yet compared from the residents, sorry. But regarding the council responsiveness to the water supply problem, I'm concerned that now it's more and more warmer, because I try to get an answer up to now, a couple of months, I have still not yet get an answer. Regarding the Dunton the suction tank repairment, the update status. But the staff mission need to engage with the contract, but almost 2 months didn't get any of the information. So I just don't know why we are lost the control, because the community resident particularly concerned this one, long time. Yes. This one.
Okay, so I don't have the details with me right now. What I can do is talk to the head of Three Waters and see whether we can get you a response as quickly as possible. Can I just clarify the particular one that you're looking at? It's page 25. Is it the reliability of quality of water? Okay, I will take a note and come back to you on that.
Thank you.
All right. Nothing further? Just on the subject of performance, I note that we had an email from Dawn on the 19th of November advising us that our Customer Services Centre had won a national award for customer service in the National CRM Awards, not only this year, but for the second year in a row. So can we congratulate you and the team on that? Certainly a huge achievement, and it's good to see that well recognised with those national awards. So well done, and thank you.
Pass that on to Sarah Newman and her team.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So I'm happy to move the recommendation here. Pauline will second. Is there any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. All right, so now we'll move to item 8, the Capital Project Performance Report. Ruth, welcome to the table. Thanks for the report. Thank you for joining us. And clearly there's an ongoing narrative here around COVID-related cost escalations, supply chain issues, leading into some conversation about commercial viability and possible substitutions as well, which is all made clear in the report. So if there's anything that you're wanting to particularly draw attention to, that would be great. And obviously you've got heads of service available as well for any presentation and questions too. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So this is the Capital Performance Report to the end of October. I'll just address a couple of the queries that we had last committee. We'll follow on from them a little bit more later as well, as particularly in reference to the supply chain risks and issues. So we had a query around cost escalations in relation to whether it might be better for us to defer some of the projects that are encountering significant cost escalations. So Jane did answer that query at last committee, just noting that a joined up approach would be required from central and local government in relation to deferring full programs of work. However, we are addressing that issue as much as we can more proactively within our means internally. So we're commencing a work stream to assess the commercial viability of continuing projects that are experiencing these cost escalation issues versus the risk, the condition of an asset, for example. So what we will be doing is considering progressing projects that are not obviously subject to cost escalation, continuing projects in the planning and design phases, again, ensuring that we have that rolling program of work and construction when they are ready to go, they're ready for it. And we're applying the principle of substitution. So as you know, when our projects suffer delays or have issues, we continue at a program level to essentially deliver against the program level budget. So we agree at the beginning of the year what that program level budget is. Projects move in and out of that program to ensure that we can continue to deliver against our commitment to that overall budget. So that will also apply for projects that are experiencing cost escalation. We'll have that substitution principle. So in all cases, we'll provide visibility of the significant substitutions that we make, and that will be in this report. So there'll be a general update on supply chain risks and issues very shortly. The other query that we have in this committee is around Kiwi Rail. Just an update on that this is continuing to progress positively. We're having more frequent governance meetings with Kiwi Rail and are tracking the required outcomes. So Lynette will be up shortly, and if you have any more specific questions about that, you can ask Lynette. In terms of our current forecast to the end of 2021 financial year, similar forecast to last month. We're currently projecting a 392 million spend against a 418 core program, which would mean that we end up with a 94% delivery. So the forecast below budget at present is mainly representative of the Three Waters program and also that delayed construction start for Hornby Library, which you're all very familiar with. The good news is that Hornby Library is now progressing with piling having started Monday. Mark and Alistair will speak very shortly to their programs. So before we get to the individual programs and bring our heads of service up, there's just a few all of capital comments that I want to make. Firstly, with COVID impacts, these are the ones from our recent lockdown in August. There's been no change from last month. I mentioned to you that we are expecting 63 variations out of the 110 projects that we had mobilised. To date, we've received 43 of those claims and we've now finalised 34. So that's an additional 12 from what you saw last month. At the moment, to reassure you, those additional costs are not going to impact project budget. They can be absorbed within the contingency that we've got on projects. We don't have full visibility yet, so that may change, but it's good news so far. And we will continue to provide you visibility as we start to finalise these claims. Secondly, supply chain risks and issues. You see this monthly. There hasn't been a whole heap of change from what you saw last month. We are continuing to mitigate these risks as much as possible, and the teams are doing a really good job at being able to do that. So last month you had Jane O'Toole here to speak to you about it. Jane is actually acting head of HR at the moment, and this is Rebecca Smith, who is our acting head of procurement, and so Rebecca will provide us an update now.
Thank you. Morning. As Ruth said, there hasn't been much change from the report that was presented last month. The main risks remain the same with shipping costs, lead times and congestion at the ports, and labour shortages. There are some early indications that global supply logjams are going to start to ease a little bit, with international shipping and container pricing indexes starting to decrease a bit as well. Delivery lead times are still getting longer, showing that its worst reading ever was in October, and shortages are expected to intensify through to the end of 2021. Just to confirm, the main mitigation, as mentioned last month, we're procuring early to prevent delays and try and achieve cost certainty. We are providing program visibility to our contractors so they can be prepared, more prepared. We're including options for alternative materials, and our design process is starting to consider the lead times in the materials. Communication with our suppliers and joint strategic planning options around delivery and materials, and encouraging our suppliers to consider the supply chain risks and mitigation at tender so we can get on top of things early.
All right, thank you. How do you want to deal with questions? Do you want to take questions on each area as we go? So, yeah, are there any questions on those supply chain and cost escalation COVID-related issues that we can put now? Yanni?
I mean, I guess I'm just interested in like what we're doing to use more local, New Zealand produced products. So if you take like the big belly bins, like, we're told there's only one supplier and they have to come from Singapore, but we've got a university, we've got, an engineering school. Are there things that we're looking at to try and look at manufacturing locally? Are we talking to like the local manufacturers association?
So local supply is always a consideration with any tender. Of course, there's lots of other bits and pieces that go into that. If we can source locally, we will always source locally.
Right. I guess I'm just interested if there's critical things that we need that are coming from overseas, what our ability is to look at getting them produced and manufactured locally. Like, how proactive can we be in that space with, the university or with other people?
I'll have to go back and look at that and talk to the procurement managers and see what they're doing in that area and come back to you.
Yeah,
I would assume, given that we're looking at mitigations for these risks, we would be looking at all options to mitigate.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Further questions? Jimmy? This is just on the...
just on item. But this item 8.
Yeah, so this is just on, for the moment, though, the cost escalation, the procurement, and the supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So but this information is pretty good. But only concern, how about the delivery date? Also in here or not? I don't know. For instance, like the major cycle route, section 2, from Queven to the...
Okay, so let's leave that one for when we've got Lynette in front of us. That would be the time to ask that question on transport.
So now?
No.
Oh.
Okay,
the other one. Okay.
What we're going to do, Jimmy, is bring each of the heads of service up
that
that Three Waters questions can be asked, the transport questions can be, and so on.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So we'll come back to you on that.
Okay.
Nothing else? That's great. Okay. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
So Ruth, on to the next page.
So I'll bring the heads of service up now to talk around deliverability of their units, including any risks that they're experiencing over and above the supply chain. So the deliverability commentary you'll find in your report from pages 37 to 52. Just a keynote on accuracy of forecasting. Last month it was 95%. We're still at 95%, which is really good. However, as you can see, there's some big months to come. So let's bring Lynette down first. So they're currently forecasting 166 against a budget of 144. Sorry. It's all right.
We are going to do that. After my last once of saying, no, we're not going to. We can't answer it. Look, month on month I sit here and I think I say the same thing, but we are very confident in our delivery profile because of the fact that we've got a huge amount of our program early in our LTP cycle in contract, and that's not actually usual. So we've got a lot of large contracts that are running well and running successfully. So that's why we're comfortable with our delivery profile.
Great. Yeah, it's certainly good to see, a long list of projects that are scheduled for early delivery, and obviously growth projects that we're prioritising in response to developer investment and fast-moving projects there as well.
The early delivery is in a large factor of that is the deliverability review that we put across projects at the time of the LTP that you asked us to do. So we took a realistic view. They've gone better than expected, so we are able to deliver them ahead of the schedule that we anticipated at that time.
So the commentary on the reseals program, about 20% of the program has only recently been confirmed. Are there some timing issues there? I mean, has that been affected by COVID in some way, or it just seems as if there's a bit of a timing and sequencing problem there?
No, we usually run about an 80-20 roll. So there is a bit of, if you run that 80-20 roll, 80% of the program is up and running and going. All of a sudden, Three Waters will have something that they have to bring forward, so we need to do a shuffle. So there's usually shuffling in the program. The team are working really closely. We still have improvements to do in how we schedule and advise the work notices to our contractors. We're working on that. We've got a new maintenance manager starting early in the new year to take over from Mark, and they're working on those systems and processes at the moment to get them up and running smoother. So our maintenance contracts over the last 5 years have taken a step up each year in performance. We're working on what the next big step is for those programs.
All right, that's
but
great.
I'm comfortable that they're going. They could be better, but they're going okay, and they've got 80% of what they need to get going quite early in the year.
Yep, and noting that the level of risk has dropped as well, which is good to see that called out in the report. Great.
And we have only just started our sealing season, so we're only in the first month of that. So.
All right, thank you. Now, Jimmy, you had a transport-related question.
Only on page 53, regarding the South Express, the route, section 2, Quaven Street to the Buchanan. This page, and also compared to the page 88, the forecast deliver date is an inconsistency difference. This page on page 53, the delivery date will be on the November 23. But page 88, delivery date will be December 22. So which one is correct? One is page 53, the section 2, Quaven Street to the Buchanan. It's November 23. But the page 88,
I don't know.
Same section,
I'll have to
December 22,
I'll have to come
which
back
one?
and confirm. We're due to do an update on the cycleways and the Hornby projects out to the Hornby board, so I'll get that done before Christmas.
Because I think the consistent date is very important. Otherwise, it almost 1 year the gap. Just
So let's get some
I apologise,
clarification.
yeah.
We can be given
I
that
can't
further update.
clarify that.
Yep.
off the top of my head.
okay, thank you. Second one is regarding to on page 59, the Horseway Junction Road extension. My understanding, staff do your best, try to have a meeting with the Kiwi Rail. But now all the forecast delivery date will be in June 23. So whether this consider the information feedback from the Kiwi Rail.
Yes,
So
it has.
forecasting here.
Yes, it has.
Okay, I just want to know. Yes. Okay. Third one is multicultural the center. Because we
That's not transport, Jimmy.
this one
So
not
when we get into
okay,
community
okay.
facilities.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Let me.
We have that one.
Nothing else on transport?
Okay. That's it.
All right. So when
Okay.
we get to
Yeah,
vertical, I'll
okay.
come to you as well.
Thank
That's
you.
fine. Thank you. Phil.
Thanks, Lynette. Hey, how hard would it be to give me a list of what we're proposing to asphalt smooth in the next 2 or 3 months?
You've had that list through the board.
Yeah, no, for the whole. What
I
roads?
can provide the council with all of the the list that's gone to all of the boards.
Of smoothing,
No, of asphalt surfacing.
right? Because we put in the budget that we were going to put more money into smoothing, which is fine, which I'm more than happy with. Which ones are going to? I just want to know which roads in the next month or two are in the pipeline for smoothing.
Well, it's all of the resurfacing program is on. You want to know what the treatment is as opposed to what the resurfacing is. Well, that depends on the road and what we're doing. So we've got more on budget for asphalt roads.
Smoothing.
We've got more on budget for asphalt roads. We've got more on budget for chip seal roads. We are looking to get out there and ensure that every time we go out, we improve the ride quality. However, it needs to be done to improve it. If that's a rip and remake, we do a rip and remake. If it's a road that's appropriate for us to do some pre-seal repairs where we put a smoothing layer over it, we'll do that. But we're going to do the right treatment to end up with a better ride quality at the end of it. So all of our resurfacing program will be having the same
Lens.
over it. That's the right term, thanks.
And the new Mark, did you say next year?
Just after Christmas, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go.
All right, so Phil, that answers the question. You got what you need there? Yep, great. All right, any further questions for Lynette on transport? All right, Lynette, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Ruth, back to you.
Yeah, Mark, in terms of Three Waters, so they're currently forecasting 170 against a budget of 202.
Thank you.
Everybody. So, yes, in terms of challenges we've got facing Three Waters, we've already signalled that we're stretched to achieve our overall budget this financial year. Our focus is on FY23 particularly, and being ready to deliver on that particular year. That said, we want to try and improve as much and spend as much of the budget this year as possible. We're currently resourcing to improve our situation. We've got a number of positions internally which we're backfilling, interviewing for, and we had a ELT approval recently for additional staff to help us meet that Forward Works programme. So right now we're frantically trying to secure those resources. It's a challenging market out there, as you can imagine. There's not a lot of people around of the calibre we need to do the work. So, but we're confident at this stage. So.
All right, so that's clearly one of the biggest challenges that you're facing. I mean, would you get to a point if you're not able to find the resources that you need, where you would be contracting in project by project on a shorter term basis?
There are opportunities to how we may have to explore in a bit more detail, but they come with some risk. You know, we could outsource some aspects of the work which we do internally, but like I said, there are definite risks there, which I'd rather not go down those tracks at this stage. And then, of course, if you bring in external resource into for what's particularly planning type roles, you lose that IP if they move on, or if after the contracted period ends. So it's not good for the longer term business.
Yep, sure. All right. I think it's fair to say this is something that we'll be interested in over the upcoming versions of this report, so over the next few months. So if you can continue to highlight either whether that risk is remaining or getting worse, or certainly if you're finding things easing, that's something that we'd be interested in as well. So if that can continue to be called out, that would be good.
Yep, sure.
Thank you. So moving to questions, Sam.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. It's a good report. So, I mean, I really like what you guys are doing in terms of the resourcing and the like to ensure we can deliver it. With all of those changes happening now, at what point during next year do you think you'll be in a position to say whether those changes have helped? So, I mean, I guess the example would be if you're recruiting for staff at the moment and you go, actually, we can't get as many as we want. At what point does that trigger reforecasting for the remainder of the year, but then obviously the next year?
Yeah, good question. As I said, the focus is on FY23 really, particularly. The resources which we've been approved to to recruit, or around the planning phase to feed that long-term plan, the delivery of the capital programme. So they're the areas where we're really stretched right now. And if we get those resources before our level of service target date, which is March, effectively, to have our projects for FY23 all drawn down and briefed, then we're on a good footing, effectively, to deliver on FY23. Now, that's from an internal planning resource. We would still have to supplement that with contracted or additional PM resource for the delivery.
Right, so we'd kind of get to, say, the end of March, and we'd have a good feel for if everything you've tried to do to change it is going to work.
Yes,
and
effectively, if we've hit the level of service target, which we have it organisationally in March, then that will tell you straight away whether or not we're on a good, good
cool.
track.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else on Three Waters? Yanni?
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the smart water sensors. Like, obviously, we know there's a delay in getting them, and there's quite a long lead-in time. And my understanding is we're only doing a small amount to trial them. So is there any consideration of either doing a quicker trial and ordering more, or looking at how we're procuring around that?
Okay, so are you referring to the water meters, particularly, Yanni?
It's the smart water systems.
Right. There's a number of threads to that particular piece of work, so I'm not really sure which way the specific delays may be there, but there's the test, obviously, the trial is in the Rafiti zone. They're trying a number of different smarts in that zone. Water meters being one of the items of equipment which we're procuring.
It's just on page, sorry, I'll just be more specific. It's on page 74. And it's the WS smart water monitoring system 62350.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's, as Ruth just pointed out, it is just a risk to the programme delivery. I wouldn't say it's been highlighted as a concern at this stage to me directly regarding.
Just, I mean, in simple terms, when are we likely to see a smart meter, a smart water monitoring system in place on the ground where we can look at its effectiveness?
I'll have to come back to you with the timeframes for the project, but there's a number of threads, but you can look at it one lens for one aspect, but really what we want to see is all of those different components coming together in that package of work, to really evaluate the true benefit of that before we seek.
All right, so if you can come back to us outside of this meeting with that would be good. Thank you. Any further questions on Three Waters and waste? Nothing further? All right, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So next is Capital Delivery Community.
Darren. Current forecast of 34 against a budget of 35.
Good morning. Continued high level of confidence and delivery around that target. We've got some big projects on site at the moment with a significant cash flow coming through. You will have seen the bridge work going on in the Otakaro Open River Corridor and the associated landing as well. So there's several $1 million tied up in there, which is coming through in invoicing. Similarly, completing the work at Naval Point, multi-million dollars worth of invoices coming through there. And soon to be doing quite a bit of work through the Rec and Sport program. So vigilance across that entire portfolio and continued confidence in delivery.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Darryl on these projects? All right. Thank you very much.
Major facilities, Alistair.
Yes, boss.
Hello. Current forecast of 35 against 41.
So I think in particular, it's, as Ruth stated, to see Hornby break ground is an enormous milestone for us, and it's also brings to light the issues that you face with those forward ordering of materials and the impacts that they have on programs of work. So again, just to back what Ruth mentioned and also what Rebecca mentioned around early procurement models to procure early, methodologies are all being investigated to accelerate programs of work. And to that matter, both the risks around COVID impacts themselves, but also the risks around procurement of early materials and program issues have probably been highlighted through all risk registers across the portfolio. So it just sort of starts to highlight to everybody, and we bring it and raise it as a matter of attention at every PCG control group, and every steering group, and at every board meeting. So a lot of work around risk management and risk workshops at the minute to maintain productivity. And in doing so, it allows us to work better and have better methodologies to manage the programs that we've got to deliver. So that's the current oversight of everything that we've got within the program at the moment.
All right, great, thank you. Now, Sam and I had the opportunity to have a look through the old Municipal Chambers building earlier this week, and there are some photos on my Facebook page which are pretty impressive, actually. I was amazed at the quantum of work that's going on there and the size of that project. So really just reporting back on that, my take on it was it's a far bigger project than we might have ever imagined. The quantum of work going on there is massive. So that's Old Municipal Chambers. Now, Jimmy, you had a question on Multicultural Recreation and Community Centre.
Alistair.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. If that's true, because you, regarding the budget, you particularly emphasize bring back to the financial year 22, for $3 million. But original forecast delivery date in June 21. But current forecast date, you still know any kind of forecast date. I just want to know, you bring back, it means you can get a more kind of information like a certainty, so you can forecast why still uncertain, no forecast delivery date.
The MCRC issue is around the sale and purchase agreement with the netball organisation.
Yes.
And it's about the funding stream that we've got to allow them to build the Netzel Centre at Napunawai.
Yes.
So the bring back is to meet the needs of their budget, because they're currently in construction. So they're progressing their build. So the Netzel are progressing their build on Napunawai.
Yes.
And they need that funding. And that's why the money was brought back, because it's part and parcel of the sale and purchase agreement,
okay,
which is 2.5 million. So the MCRC going forward is still a work in progress, but it doesn't require finances. It's about the sale of the netball centre to achieve the delivery of the Netzel Centre.
Okay.
If I've dropped enough netballs and Netzels in that conversation, I apologise, but that's the way it is at the minute. It's a project that's underway. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
But,
So
one more. Okay.
Yep, sure.
Okay.
Yep.
But you mentioned earlier regarding Hornby Library. Thank you so much, staff. Done a great job. At least, Monday have a formal construction, those still part. But regarding the budget, because you particular the carry forward from 22, 18 million to following year 11.3 million, so 6.7 million. Let's consider those delay the delivery, particularly for the steel pipe. Am I right?
Yeah, it's the delivery. It's the start on site. So
Yes.
the start on site is a milestone date.
Yeah, yeah.
It occurred this week. Informally occurred this week. We did try to mitigate that by, if you remember, we had HEB Construction down there doing all the pre-start works, or the groundworks that were required
Yes.
to establish the rig on site.
Yes.
So we have mitigated as much as we can time delays, and we also wanted to protect council and council's costs with regard to starting on site with the main contractor early.
Yes.
So we literally ran a gauntlet of steel being landing in Timaru,
Yes.
and Naylor Love commencing on site. So we've done that. We've managed that. We're now got a model where we're actually delivering the project. We've
Yes.
started on groundworks, which means that we'll start to reevaluate our cash flow forecast with the contractor now that they've commenced.
Yes.
So that will change over time. Over multiple year projects, we usually fluctuate somewhat because of delivery phases.
Yes.
So we'll be working with their QSs and our QSs now to establish a clear forecast over the next few years of delivery. So it may fluctuate again,
Yes.
but at the minute that's our current best guess on cost burn rate, cash burn rate.
Okay, but regarding the implication between this budget and also the delivery date, but you still date, at the moment you still commit in the February 2023. Am I right?
I'd have to confirm the
Yeah,
date.
yeah,
But
that's-
it
that's
is.
right,
It is later because of the delay. So
Yeah, but in 23 financial year, your budget actually carry forward is $6.7 million.
yeah, so it'll be continued payments as we go through the process. So again, I can confirm that at the next update, which will be the full major facilities elected member update, and I can confirm that for you at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
Great, thank you very much. Phil and then Aaron. Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. Just this isn't a big project, but I understand you're the head Shirang on the Estuary Edge. Is that right? Could you just give me a wee update on where that's at, please?
Yeah, so South Shore Erosion Control Project is we basically looked at we took it on board from an overview of it was 3 projects in one, and we wanted to put a program view over the top of it, and we collated and gathered and collaborated with our members across council to sort of pull the information together. We've now got a process running. We've got Jacobs running with the concept design and taking that through, and then taking that through into a consultation phase. So the intention is, yes, I'm not the head honcho on that particular project, as you say, Phil, but we do have an appointed PM resource now that's working on that project and is driving the project team to deliver the outcomes that we're trying to make.
So that's off getting design.
Yeah,
right,
it's underway now. It's underway right now. We had our first PCG last week, so control group last week.
Great, thank you. Aaron.
Now, Alistair, it might not be your question to answer, and you've got that face that you just had with Phil, which is, oh no, what's he asking now? But Parakiori, the question we had around the hydroslide accessibility for people with disability, have we got an answer yet?
Yeah, we have. It was. I have seen it. The response back from Craig Hutchins. It was for me. I think we did some minor edits, and that was going to come through to the council secretariat to be issued out to you and to the rest of the councillors as a response in the answer to the questions that you raised, which was I think about 3 points at one of the last finance performance meetings. I can't remember the exact content.
But there's something coming to us in writing.
There is, yeah, and it is done. Honestly, it's done, and I know that Mark Noonan did the final edit, which is not unusual for Mark. He likes to dot the T's.
All right, so let's get the communication out.
Yep.
So that we've got the answer.
I'll follow up straight after.
Thank you.
So when will we find out?
I'll get it issued today, so it'll come through. So you should probably see the email today.
And is it still in time to instigate something?
No.
So it's going to.
But it gives you the reasoning why. It gives you all the reasons why.
So it will be a non-inclusive facility.
Hello. So sorry, Aaron, it's sitting with me. I had one more question that I wanted to clarify before I provided the advice through. So in terms of you will get it in terms of the next 2 days. There was one question that I had that I needed to clarify before I sent it out. So it's sitting with me to release to come back to you for the advice.
So let's wait for that information to come out rather than speculating on what that might be or asking staff to answer questions
I think
that
they
don't yet know the answers to. That'll come out to us in the next couple of days.
Yep. You look happy, so it's going to be inclusive?
Let's wait for the information to come out.
Conclusive answer.
Yanni.
Yeah, thanks. Just on the Metro Sports, Parakiori. So I see our opening date is still showing 2022, December 2022. Is that correct?
No, it will be later. There's no doubt.
So when are we able to get a new revised date?
Might as well let Nigel answer the question.
In terms of what you've got in terms of the report that's coming through from Alistair and his team is the construction timeframes that have been reported from CPB via Otakaro. In terms of what Otakaro provided in terms of the likely opening date is Q1 2023. So there's a difference between what's forecasting to make sure the construction date is correct based on what CPB and Otakaro are providing, but we're forecasting the public opening date will be Q1 2023.
Right, okay. And just the advice that Aaron's talking about, does that include also the parents' room request?
Yes.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you. Anything else for Alistair? All right, great. Alistair, thanks very much indeed. So moving on to the next one, which is parks, is that right?
Yep, Andrew.
Andrew, welcome to the table. Thanks for joining us.
So parks have a current forecast of 10.8 against a budget 10.6.
Kia ora. Yes, we're on forecast at the moment, which is good. We're always going to caveat, I guess, our final result against what happens in autumn in terms of weather. I don't know if you can recall back last autumn, but it was extremely dry, and our planting program probably got about halved of what we would normally predict. So we don't have that crystal ball, but everything else outside of plantings is on track at the moment. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on parks, Celeste?
Just following up on an earlier conversation we had, would it be possible to add the coastal estuary edge erosion projects that have been bundled together to the Capita watch list, given that there's quite high community interest in that, and I'm aware that the community have some, strong interest in some having visibility to that, so something that we could do.
So generally would revisit the watch list once a year. Our criteria is that it's of significant size or of public interest, which this project is. We could add it to the future watch list from now. We just have to make that decision here today, essentially. Noting that the project is in very early phases, so you wouldn't see a lot of information in the watch list probably, within the next year as we progress through the design and early planning.
But it would meet the criteria
It
for
does
the
meet
watch
the
list
criteria,
project?
yep.
Yeah. I mean, is there a point at which you'd recommend we put it on the watch list, or would the right thing to do if we want it to be a watch list project to do that now?
We generally look to projects that are going to be delivered within that financial year, but there are projects there in the earlier phases because they have that significant public interest. So it's really a decision that we can make here today, and I could put it on for future months.
All right. So the way to do that would be by adding an additional resolution to add that project to the watch list today. Yep. All right. So Celeste, are you indicating that you want to add something to the resolution that does that?
Thank you.
All right. Great. So if we can add some wording, that's fine.
Andrew, I'll second.
All right. That's great. So when we get there, then I'll take the resolution as moved by Celeste with that addition and seconded by Tim. That's fine. Thank you. Are there any further questions on parks? All right. That's great. Andrew, thanks very much. So now moving to IT.
Oh, IT's not here today.
IT's not here today.
They're progressing quite well, IT, currently delivering against their forecast and have some key projects in the pipeline for delivery this year.
Okay, that's fine. And then we've got the other down the bottom. There's no commentary on that? No. All right, that's great. So that's covered off all the questions for the various different areas of the business. Are there any other questions that people wanted or needed to ask that haven't yet been asked and answered? All right, great. So how are we going with this recommendation? Agree that the coastal edge pathway, coastal estuary edge project.
Short. David's just doing it.
Is it just the estuary edge project, isn't it?
I think the three projects have been bundled into one. So you've got Stock Bank, the erosion, and then you've also got the South Brighton Reserve. They're all...
Maybe we should specify all of that in the resolution so that we've got it clear. Andrew, you might have some advice in
the
this
project
regard.
should be referred to as this, the South New Brighton South Shore Estuary Edge Erosion Control. That's essentially...
So that's the wording that we need to pick up in this resolution.
Exactly called in CPMS, sorry. Yeah, it's actually called Red Zone Regeneration South Shore and South New Brighton Estuary Edge Erosion Management. We can probably drop the residential red zone.
Okay. Do the Secretariat need you to say that again?
South Shore and South New Brighton Estuary Edge Erosion Management. South Shore and South New Brighton Estuary Edge Erosion Management.
South Shore and South New Brighton Estuary Edge
Erosion Management
project. And that picks up that package of projects that make that bigger project up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, great. Be added to the council's capital watch list. Capital watch list. And that means that from next month's reporting onwards, we would see reporting on that. But just noting, Ruth, your comments that reporting will be quite slow in the early phases till the project really gets underway.
Yep.
All right, that's great. So, so that's moved by Celeste, seconded by Tim. Is there any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I note that we've got Christchurch NZ already in the room, so it would make sense for us now to move straight to item 10, which is the Christchurch NZ Q1 report. So I'll vacate the chair and Sam McDonald will move in. And yeah, let's move to the Christchurch NZ item.
Welcome, Paul and Laura. That's great. And Therese sitting there as well. Do you want to just launch into it and then we can go to questions if there are any after that?
Yeah, indeed. Kia ora koutou. I think you all know me. I'm sitting in the hot seat today. Therese is here. You know Laura, and we've got Boyd Warren, who's our head of innovation and business growth, to answer any questions on that topic. Yeah, so we've got 10 slides. We've got a summary. I think you've seen the pre-read, and Laura will talk you through that shortly. But as you know, I've sort of been in the executive director seat for about 4 weeks, I think it's been. So the advantage of that, I guess, is for someone on the board to get a greater understanding of what's happening in the business, and then to bring that back to the table, and also to provide any support I can to Laura and the senior leadership team. I think we've mentioned a few times that the recruitment for the CEO is going well. We are doing the final interviews on Saturday and expect to make an announcement within a few weeks. So that's been great progress. So hand over to Laura. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Kia ora koutou. You're seeing a lot of us at the moment, so excited to be able to present to you our Q1 update. It seems like just yesterday we did the year in review. As you know, we're continuing to work in a really fast-moving environment, with the example of yesterday's announcements of the borders opening to New Zealanders that are vaccinated being able to return in February and the rest of the world in April, and also the national move to the traffic light framework. Q1 has seen a number of impacts and reprioritisation of work, as I'm sure you would be aware. We're seeing an ongoing and increasing demand for business support services and cancellation or postponement of events, and obviously an increased need for economic insights. We're monitoring our key performance indicators really closely. As you know, the target for this year is a 4-to-1 return on investment. We will report in more detail at the half year on our KPIs, but we continue to carefully monitor our 32 levels of service with Council. Through the presentation today, we have given some key value for the city information where we can. We're likely to see an impact on our visitor spend KPI at year end for obvious reasons, and the presentation today covers detailed levels of service as we go through. So the first slide is focusing on our innovation and business growth area. The Council and our Mayor have done a lot of work to support Christchurch through the difficult process to ensure that the International Antarctic Gateway programs could continue to move through Christchurch as the gateway. The exciting news is that 1,500 personnel will be passing through this year, which is a significant increase on last year's COVID-impacted season of 780 staff. These staff are from the USA, Italy, Korea, France and Germany. Unfortunately, the Days of Ice Festival has had to be postponed to February due to the difficulties of managing non-ticketed events with the COVID vaccination requirements. Screen Canterbury has had an incredible response to the inaugural Canterbury New Zealand production grant. If these screen projects actually proceed all the way through, they will bring in 192 crew jobs to Christchurch, 100 shoot days and a significant local spend. This grant is the first of it in New Zealand of its nature, and it's created a significant and increased positive profile for Christchurch as a screen destination, which was our intent. So in carrying on with innovation and business growth, our innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem continues to thrive. We've had 40 businesses receiving incubation support during the quarter, 13 new jobs grown in businesses at Te Ahaka, and 2 new Māori businesses onboarded in the quarter. Business and investment attraction actively working with 53 organisations considering moving to Christchurch, including 5 which have a reasonable chance of converting within the next 12 months. This has been impacted by the ability to showcase our destination with investors and business decision makers due to the COVID borders. Border closures also continue to constrain our local job growth, and the impacts of border opening is yet to be assessed on this. Whiri Ora, as you know, is our key partner for growing skills and employment, and they've onboarded and pathwayed 25 whānau of varying ethnicities and backgrounds. There's been 63 students from Hayata and Linwood that are receiving mentoring through our Haupara program. There's 103 education to employment engagements that have been undertaken by Motivations NZ, with 16 students transitioning to work or vocational training. As I mentioned, economic leadership is a really strong demand at the moment. As you'd be aware, after a strong period of economic activity, Canterbury experienced a slight decline in activity during August due to the level 4 lockdown and also the ongoing impact on us of the Auckland lockdown. The decline in the economic activity index is slightly less than the national decline. Employment year on year from September 20 to September 21, our employment growth was 10%. Working age population increased by a similar amount, and that trend's been building over the past year. And we also have an incredibly high participation rate, 0.5% above the New Zealand average. So the regional economic confidence is net positive since Q4 2020. The retail spend was, however, down in August due to the lockdown, but a smaller impact than the one that we saw in the April 2020 lockdown. And as you can see there, building consents are growing really strongly at over 60%. From an urban development perspective, the New Brighton regeneration project is proceeding well. Significant progress on the residential development phase of this regeneration project. And more excitingly, we're starting to see private sector interest, with a local developer recently obtaining consent for the beach house, which will be a complex of hospitality outlets, shops and event venue, which is opposite the foreshore attractions. And we're also continuing to work with a group of strategic developers to actually create and launch a coordinated marketing plan for their development. So that's really that transition from local government led to actually private sector led. Major events, not as positive a story, but the exciting news is that this week it was 100 days to go to the Women's World Cricket Cup will be held in Christchurch. We had media announcements this week and the unveiling of a cricket ball countdown clock by Sir Richard Hadley. We've shot an amazing host city video that also features Sir Richard, Debbie Hockley and Amy Satterthwaite, who's the vice captain of the White Ferns, and this will be released internationally through the Women's World Cricket Cup channels, and also through our own city channels. So great opportunity to showcase Christchurch to the world, and great timing. A number of other events have been impacted by the uncertainty caused by the COVID alert levels and the vaccination certificate requirements. Negotiations are continuing to progress well for Season 3 of Is Our Gdp in early 2023. From a visitor attraction point of view, a lot of work in tourism recovery and support. Work has begun in partnership with Christchurch Airport to develop an international recovery plan to maximise Christchurch's offshore presence when the borders open. The Tourism Capability Programme commences on the 22nd of November, and a number of international and domestic business events have had to be cancelled or postponed. The future pipeline's looking really positive for business events, with 18 new bids in the quarter, 7 wins and 1 loss, and the remaining are pending. The visitor spend for those successful bids is estimated to be valued at about 2.5 million. From a marketing, brand and communications point of view, 3 key campaigns outlined there: Explore Christchurch, Do Winter Differently, Festival of Brass and Christchurch Business Events. We've had strong marketing results in the quarter, encouraging travellers to travel across the city and region, obviously within the constrained market that we're working within. Festival of Brass had excellent engagement and resulted in really strong visitor numbers into Christchurch at a difficult time. And the focus is now on the growing awareness of Christchurch as a business events destination to priority Australian audiences in partnership with Te Pai in advance of the opening next year. So the money slide, financial results to the 30th of September for the quarter. We have a surplus of 784,000, which is 1.4 million ahead of the budgeted loss.
Obviously, delivery has been impacted by COVID lockdowns during the quarter, significant increase in assets due to additional central government funding being vested in Christchurch NZ. Funding that's committed but not expended is being held for appropriate and targeted investment for recovery and restart. I'd just like to note that more than a third of the revenue for the quarter is actually from sources other than council. And the last slide, just rounding out our levels of service. All of our levels of service are currently on track, but there are a couple that we're starting to see may be impacted at year end. The first one being the number of business events attracted. Obviously, due to the delay into PI and border closures, this may be impacted. We're working as hard as we can. As I noted, we've done 17 bids, but it just depends on the number that we can win before the end of the year as to whether or not we'll be able to achieve that target. And we're also starting to see early indicators that our digital engagement target of 5.2 million engagements may be impacted by year end, largely due to ongoing border closures. We will continue to monitor these closely and will provide an update in the next quarter. And that's my last slide, so we're really happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming in and doing that. And I mean, for me, I found that really useful because it's tangible stuff, and you're sort of measuring against what you've been out there doing. Can we just go back to the? Are we driving the slides? Can we go back to the Cricket World Cup one? I just had a quick question particularly around how yesterday's announcements about MIQ may impact that. Have you had any sort of update overnight in terms of, like, I mean, they're talking first game 24th of March, but my understanding was there was something about the 1st of April was going to be when a lot of people could come back into the country without sort of having that requirement around MIQ. Have you had anything overnight?
So these plans were all made based on the current settings, so there's only an upside in terms of the new settings. So we haven't had an assessment of what that'll look like, but it will be better than what we were currently planning for.
Perfect. So there were already MIQ spots booked and the like. Okay, fantastic. Does anyone else have questions? Celeste?
Yeah, it was great to get an update on, the New Brighton regeneration plan and also all the interest that's coming from the private sector, which is great news for the area. In terms of the marketing plan, I did get a little bit of information about that. Have other groups been invited to participate in that outside of the sort of key players?
I'm not actually sure, but I can get Kath to provide an update and let you know.
Yeah, that would be great, because I suspect there'll be a few other parties that may be interested in if there is sort of a joint marketing strategy and whether we could broaden the scope a little bit.
Yeah.
But that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Aaron?
Yeah, couple of questions. One is on the Antarctic program. So obviously one of the downsides of last year was the number of people that come back from Antarctica through Christchurch. They weren't allowed out, even though Antarctica is COVID-free. So is there any change this year? Do we get to tap them all on the way through? Because
Yes.
Well, the announcements yesterday will only have upside and be positive to that situation. But yeah, there's been no change that we've heard from the programs. Oh, apologies. Okay, great.
so they can. Great.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that'll be brilliant.
That's
Okay.
good news.
Okay, that is good news. And a question I've been asking for quite some time and still haven't got the answer is, why is our GDP per capita in Christchurch so low? I mean, I think for the Economic Development Agency, we should know the answer to that so we can work our way forward to change that.
Yeah.
As much as a council, we also set all those goals around our growth being sustainable and so forth. I mean, that's still achievable. It doesn't have to be dirty growth, it can be clean growth, which is everyone's aspiration. But why is it low and how do we fix it is the question. Thank you.
Good question.
So does anyone want to, or do you want to come back to us on that?
Do you want to report or?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right, and that's the problem. One of the problems we're trying to solve with the innovation ecosystem investment to increase levels of employment in knowledge-intensive, and higher wage businesses. But you're absolutely right, it is lower. We're not leveraging all the great assets we've got, all the tertiaries and research institutes and the innovation that happens here. We haven't been good at commercialising that, and so our innovation ecosystem partnerships, one initiative to try and address that. But you're right, it's lower than it should be.
I mean, the advantage of the Canterbury, which is shown in the COVID challenge, is quite diversified. It's been actually really resilient, remarkably so, although there's pockets of the economy that aren't reflected in there, especially in tourism and events and hospitality. But I guess the flip side of that is it doesn't generate the significance of some of the other regions when we're comparing ourselves against them, and that's kind of why we've focused in on this innovation space, to try and get that productivity growing, try and move the needle.
Yeah, and if you for the last 10 years, if you take construction out with all those rebuild dollars, I mean, we'd have a very bad looking economy. And then you look at, and as a proud Cantabrian, and when you go to the Champion Business Awards, our top end and our innovative end is fantastic, and so I just don't get it. And it's hard to argue with other centres about how great we are when they go, yeah, but your numbers, you might be proud, but your numbers aren't that good. And they're right. We're just, and so when we want to, and Dawn made the statement the other day about with some of the problems Auckland's having, we should be the next go-to place.
Absolutely.
But most businesses would go, probably not. There's a whole lot of others that look better than you on paper.
Yeah. So I think that's a good,
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily a question, but a point for you to take away.
Absolutely.
And it would be useful to come back with a bit of an update on that, because I'd like to kind of see where your thinking is on all that as well. So we don't need a response right now. Any other questions? Yanni and then Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks. I just on page 142, your marketing, brand, and communications, your Explore Christchurch campaign. You've given a figure of the direct sales, but can you tell us how much you spent on that campaign?
I don't have that number in front of me at the moment, but I can get back to you on that, Yanni. So return on investment is what you're looking for?
Yeah, well, just like, I mean, I guess it just seems like, depending on how much you spent on that maybe it didn't really have a good outcome. And I just wonder around a whole strategy around marketing in this kind of environment. We saw that after the earthquake, where the tourism company ran a big campaign in Australia. What's the big idea? And it was just the wrong timing. So I guess I was just a little bit interested in how you're sort of prioritising that marketing and focusing it on with the COVID world that we're in.
Yeah.
And how you're judging what's the right way to approach it.
Absolutely, and as you would have seen from the financial numbers that we presented today, we have been underspending purposefully so that we do have money retained when it is the right time to actually market to those visitors to get them to come back to support the businesses in Christchurch. But I will get the ROI number on that for you.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The timing, we spent a lot of time at the board talking about the timing of when it's right. When can we get the most bang for the buck? And the announcements, I mean, it's just such a moving feast at the moment with COVID, but the announcement yesterday was positive, although there's still this 7-day stand down, self-isolation for inbound and the like. But we're a step further forward in this space, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for some of us, we're quite concerned around the impact Delta's going to have on some sections of our community, and so just thinking about the right message. I know just before we went, I think it was just in the last COVID, we had another marketing campaign, I think a Heroes campaign or something like that. But the other thing, I just want to commend you for the Festival of Brass, which I had the fortune of opening, and just to say, that was a really amazing event. And so thank you for your support to that event. And it's good to get to hear that it was a good relatively small investment, but a good return. I just wanted to check in terms of economic activity, and also, I guess, just how we're measuring prosperity. What work you're doing to look at different areas of the city. In the past, after the earthquake, we did get a heat map that showed economic activity around the different geographic areas, and you could see quite clearly, a huge reduction in the east and a huge increase in the west and the southwest and the north. So I just wondered, in terms of COVID, whether you have any data that kind of shows what's happening at that more local level in terms of suburban shopping areas, those little, village centres, for example, and any sort of reflection on how the impact is being felt in those areas if you're monitoring it?
We definitely have information available on different industry types, which is more where we tend to focus our information gathering. I don't think we have detailed data on geographic space, but I think there would be other agencies across the city that would. So we could look into where that information is being held for you if that would be of interest.
Just wondering whether you think there's a need to do any sort of more targeted local economic interventions in local areas based on the impact of COVID.
Well, let us get that information from the agencies that we partner with, and then we can have a look at it.
Yeah, it'd be useful to come back.
And I know our staff in the past have shown us like a map of retail spend, so they've got some pretty good data around that. Do you sorry, just a final question though, do you like, how are you visible in those communities? Like, do you survey local businesses, or how do you reach into communities, in certain geographic areas?
So depending on the project we're working on, we reach in different ways. So obviously we work with community boards, we undertake consultation. Depending on the innovation and business growth work we're doing with specific whānau in different areas, we will target work with those communities. But
it's project based.
Yeah, it is project based. Yes. And as you know, we work across a range of different tools to actually deliver outcomes for the city. So depending on what tool we're using, depends on how we map that.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. I'm just conscious of time. So, do you want to give you quick update on the?
Right. I'll just Right. So last year, they people returning from Antarctica, and as Aaron said, without COVID-19 present in the Ross Sea part of Antarctica, they were required to take a direct bubble to departure, so they couldn't. That has been changed for this year, and a lot of people did a lot of advocacy behind the scenes to get that. It's a good outcome.
It's a great outcome.
Cool, thank you. Jimmy, and then Phil, I think.
Okay. Regarding to the major event and the visitor attraction, because based on the day before yesterday, government formal announcement protection framework key dates on and after the 30th of April, actually non-New Zealand allowed come to the New Zealand in phases. So this should be the very positive news for the particular for those visit the business, etc. But based on your slides, I didn't see any information how to working together, to help all those business vitalize the economy in Christchurch or Canterbury area.
Yes. So obviously the announcement was only made yesterday. So we're really excited about the opportunity now to be able to attract those people back to the city. And you're right, major events is a key tool for us to be able to do that. So a number of our events are still under contract with us, and now we'll be looking at the timing of when those events should be held to actually activate the city.
Yeah, because I saw your slides, your event just postponed the next year.
Yes.
Whether it's considered maybe even in the winter.
Yep.
Cool.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. And Phil, and I think we're nearly there.
Thanks, guys. Hey, with the Scott-based bid that we did for Littleton, was Christchurch NZ involved in that, or was it mainly just LPC doing?
LPC, it was a commercial deal between LPC.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. All right, we've got a resolution there just to receive the quarter one report. Jimmy's happy to move it. Fantastic. Phil will second it. Any discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you all for coming in. That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now we might have, Linda, have we got Amy Carter out?
Just check.
Okay. Because we should try and do that before the 11 o'clock break. was.
We should clarify is that the attachment still had confidential on it. Oh, it's not. It's not. Yeah.
Welcome, Amy. Thanks, and Linda. Hey. So we might get. Yeah. Have you got a PowerPoint? Oh, you haven't? No. Do you want to just run through what you want, and then we can go to questions?
You want to read, or it's your report?
I'll take the report as read, but I would like to just make a couple of points. One is that there is a watermark across the Foundation's review of its strategic program. The watermark says it's confidential, but it's not. We've got to take it off. I'd like to also draw your attention to towards the end where we talk about the annual report coming in December, and that the Foundation would like to come in and talk to you about the model that they have developed and for measuring value from their activities.
Yeah, so just to add some context to that, councillors, understanding community aspirations and then matching our program to that's incredibly important. We did that through our vital signs research, which we do on a 5-yearly basis with an annual dip. And then part of that is then understanding that we actually make a difference. It's not we can throw money at things, but it doesn't mean that things change, as we well know. So to that end, we've been working with the Next Foundation and have developed an impact review framework, and an independent fellow, Rose Challies, has conducted a review of our work to date and the impact that it has had. We'll be releasing that alongside our annual report on the 15th of December. And I'd just really like to show you what that review looks like and what then will be the framework for reporting and measuring our impact and the indices attached to it going forward on an annualised basis, kicking off next FY.
Great.
Mm-hmm. And the final thing I would like to draw your attention to is a resolution that we're seeking to reduce the reporting requirements to two times per year, at the half year and the full year, on the basis that the council's funding contribution has reduced considerably.
Mm-hmm.
And Amy?
Do you want to run through anything?
You wanted to ask me about the provincial chambers.
Yeah.
Is this public or?
It is public.
Okay.
It was more just to get a steer on,
I'd be really keen to have a chat to you about that. We've got some thoughts around it, but it's hard. So, and you're all very familiar in this room with the complexities of it. It's conservation estate on an asset owned by the council, and with Heritage New Zealand involved, and that gives me nightmares, to be frank. So looking at a way forward, we've got some ideas around how we could add value there and assist to, because it's a travesty that beautiful building's in the state that it's in. So if we could have a conversation offline and have a wee think about that, I'd be very open to doing that.
Yeah, that's what Linda might be able to sort that out. Just, I know it came up in conversation the other day with Andrew and I and Alistair Pearson, so that would be good to get an update on.
Yeah, we've got some thoughts around how we might be able to help. And what the structure could be towards doing a staged repair, so that we actually get the project moving rather than it just sitting there in decline.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Any questions? Yanni.
Yeah. In the report, I don't know if it was a typo, but it mentioned that you were doing something around vaccination. And
yes.
Do you want to just talk us through what you're actually doing in that regard?
So we were approached by one of our corporate partners to ask how they could support increasing vaccination rates within the eastern suburbs of Greater Christchurch. And then we matched them into the Canterbury District Health Board with a generous gift to then fund additional outreach programs in the eastern suburbs, which has those funds have passed through to the DHB and that program's occurred.
So how did groups in the east want to access it? Do they just go through the health board?
Yes, so the health board's been running programs. We just provided funding so they could increase their programs there because they had limited funds available to run their outreach programs. So you'd need to talk to the DHB in particular about what those programs were.
And as long as it was a program in the east, it was just tagged generally?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It went to supporting Aranui in particular and in helping grow awareness in those suburbs around the need for vaccination, was my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, thanks. I mean, just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you to that donor. That was really, really
Meridian,
cool to see.
Thank Meridian, yes.
See them playing a part. Yeah. The other thing I was just interested in is kind of what's happening, like the fees for service, in terms of, like, I see one of the things is ECAN's 150k from ECAN for running the Green Philanthropy Fund. Is that like an annual? So that's an annual fee.
So we're just in discussions and final agreement processes with them to develop a fee-for-service program, which will be publicly announced in the new year as to how that's structured. Right. And the term of that agreement is in negotiations at the moment, but it certainly is a long-term project rather than a short-term one. And that's one of the reasons is developing and growing our fee-for-service program, supporting philanthropy is why we've been able to significantly decrease our commitment from the City Council.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Anything else, Jimmy?
3 months ended 30 September 2021. The Moon Dinner, what's Moon Dinner? What kind of event?
The Moon Dinner was a high value fundraising event hosted was gifted to us by New World Durham Street to host with Julio, the chef from Littleton. He was going to host a dinner raising money for our lantern fund to purchase fresh lanterns. We've had to postpone it because of silly old COVID. So that will now be run in the new year. Yes. When we've set a date for the new Moon Festival. And so it's $450 a head. All of that money goes, 100% goes towards the Lantern Fund. And we can only fit 20, so it's very tiny, but it was a generous gift from New World Durham.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else? No? All right. And I'm assuming everyone's comfortable with reducing that to 2 times a year. It makes sense for me. So everyone happy? Yep. I'm happy to move it. Sarah's happy to second it. Any discussion? No. The only thing I was going to say was it was really good to see Aaron Perriam. Is it Aaron Perriam?
Yeah.
From Rata, right? That's been. Well,
yeah,
who was at Rata?
Yeah. So he's now the executive officer for our umbrella organisation, Community Foundations of New Zealand. So that means, and I'm on that board, so it means Greater Christchurch has got a double whammy sitting around that leadership table, which is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's good. I worked with him at Rata, and he's pretty switched on. So anyway, we'll put that to the vote. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thanks for coming in.
It's my pleasure. Nice to see you all. If I don't see you before Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. It's not that far away, 6 weeks.
All right, I think. Yeah, sure. Yeah, they can. Miles can tap it off. Yeah, we might just adjourn now for 15 minutes. Or unless have you got some? What are we up to? Corporate. Are you only here for just this report?
Steve is. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Can you do it in a couple of minutes?
Easy, depending on how many questions.
Fantastic. Yeah.
All right, so let's do that. Corporate Finance Report, which is item 9. Thanks, Sam, for chairing those last 2 items. Item 9, Corporate Finance Report. So, Leah and Steve, thank you very much indeed for waiting. Let's do this and then we'll break for morning tea. So over to you.
So we're standing between you and a coffee. Awesome. A couple of things I just wanted to state on this. You'll note that traditionally we've done this corporate finance report, which covers our treasury and our debtors, and then we normally do a finance report every quarter. What we're proposing to do going forward is that we'll have one report, and we'll present monthly. Given the level of debt going forward, I think it's prudent for this committee to actually see an updated report every month, and also it will maybe a bit different. In regards to the Treasury, I've got Steve here with me as well. Obviously, this is the report from the end of September.
Now, if I want to go, if you can scroll down for me, please. Keep going to page, the graph. I want the debt graph, which is on page, I'm just desperately trying to keep going down.
Beginning of page 100.
Yeah, I need that one. Who's controlling that one? Keep going down, please.
Page 100.
We've got it on the hub there. There's the
On
graph
page
on page
100.
100 that you're referring to, isn't it?
This is the maturity
Correct,
profile?
the maturity profile. So the only reason I want to bring this up is because this obviously, the orange, or the yellow, I hate these colours, it refers the new debt. And it's one of those things that I just want to make sure that we're going to keep repeating. We have got approximately 1.5 billion of debt over that term of the LTP, of new debt that we're taking on. And as you'll be aware from the conversations we've had recently about the increase in interest rates, this will have an impact from a financial point of view. This obviously graph that you're seeing has changed based on the early considerations that we are looking at from the annual plan. So it will get updated, especially in the next couple of years of the timing of the CapEx program. The other thing I just thought we'd take the opportunity to do with Steve here is just to give you, obviously everyone will be aware the OCR changed yesterday, so I just thought it might be appropriate for him to give you a couple of comments about that.
Yeah, I didn't really prepare anything, so I was just, if you've got any questions, that's great. But I think the message is that long term, there's no way to avoid interest rate movements. All you can do is try and fix yourself for a little while so it smooths the volatility. What's happened over the course of this year is that because the economy has recovered around the whole developed world, recovered so much more robustly than anyone anticipated previously, what had been an extraordinary reduction in market interest rates that most commentators had thought would go on for a number of years has had to be reversed very quickly. If you like, the long-term neutral hasn't actually changed that much. So, looking out for our interest rate projections in year 7, 8, 9, 10, it's really no different to what it was this time last year. What's changed is how quickly we get from where we were to where we are. This time last year, we were looking at potential for negative interest rates, which was just extraordinary and not unprecedented. German interest rates have been negative for best part of 10 years since the global financial crisis. Japanese has been longer than that. It's not impossible. And at that point, it was really kind of imprudent to fix in a lot more stuff. So we do have some exposure, inevitably, to some floating rates. Plus, whenever we're borrowing new debt, there's only a limit of how much of that you can fix in advance for two reasons. Firstly, because it's imprudent if you end up fixing it all in advance, but then it gets delayed, it gets costly to adjust it. But secondly, by doing stuff in advance, there's a natural kind of premium you need to pay for fixing things in advance. Best example I can think of is before yesterday's official cash rate, I was trying to do a little bit of forward hedging, just out of 2 or 3 years forward, and the interest rate was above 3%. And you're thinking, well, that's higher than what I think it's likely to be by the time we get there. So it's a bit of a moving beast. What we're going to find, the pressure for this LTP is that because the world has changed quite suddenly, we're moving back towards neutral much faster than anticipated. Then there'll be initial pressures in the first 2 or 3 years. Long-term picture hasn't changed, but inevitably there's going to be that kind of volatility. Challenge for us is thinking, well, how do we smooth that without making it too expensive? And can we change internally, how mechanistically the rates budget changes to the interest cost budget? At the moment, obviously, every dollar of extra interest, you need $1 of extra rates to cover it. There's possibly ways we can smooth that a little bit. That raises its own issues that we've got to make sure we're funding enough to repay this debt over the long term. So, you can't fudge it too much because you end up never repaying it. So these are the things we're trying to work through. Short term, it does mean extra pressure on rates for the first few years. Long term, it doesn't change the picture. It's just a question of how we manage that short term.
Just to be clear, fudging it is not a technical term we tend to use in the finance world. But the reason why we're just reiterating this, and it's very clear, and I'm not going to apologise for repeating myself, and you're going to get it monthly. We need to be very clear and prudent about our debt levels going forward and how we manage them, and there will be a huge impact. Okay. So on that note, if there's any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Aaron and then Tim. Aaron.
So just a quick one on the economic recovery, so-called. Governments are just printing money and pouring it into their economy. So that's not really a recovery when you're borrowing $100 million a day, is it, or is it?
I think it's worth separating the issues. The printing money thing is more of a liquidity in the banking system. The only reason that could be inflationary is if that encourages banks to lend more money in an inflationary way. Obviously, one point of it is to make sure they carry on doing business as normal. And that's actually what's happened. Banks are already tightening up on their lending arrangements, so they haven't been profligate in that sense. What we're seeing, though, and it's quite different to most of my working life, is the power of fiscal policy. Governments have been spending a lot of money on supporting businesses, at the same time increasing benefit rates and things like that. We haven't seen this level of fiscal expansion for really a very long time. And what we're discovering is that it's very powerful. You know, when governments support businesses in particular in the way that has been done.
But if you have to borrow to do that, then it's not real. So because you can only borrow for so long, and especially when the interest rate goes up, I mean, the flick at the end of that tail can be quite...
Yeah, it gets a little philosophical there about the role of government. I think for New Zealand in particular, the level of debt that we're looking at, even at its peak, is still pretty conservative. It's lower than it was when it was causing a problem in the 80s. It's lower by far than most of our peers in the developed world. And we're still looking at interest rates, despite the fact they're going back up quickly. They're going back up quickly to sort of 2.5%. So it's not the disaster scenario that some people are painting, and it's still quite prudent. I'm actually quite impressed the way the government has managed, not just the local government, but around the world, monetary authorities have managed.
So you still call it a recovery?
Oh, there's no doubt. You know, unemployment is very, very low, lower than it was before. Consumer spending is booming. We're having all the supply constraints. Obviously, there's quite a complicated story, but yeah, there's sectors that are really suffering,
cool.
And that's the nature of change. Some sectors boom and other sectors wilt, but overall, we're booming. Probably too much.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. So our debt at the our repayment on our interest rates are between 88 million and 120 million per annum. Is that correct?
More or less 90 to 100. Yeah.
So it would be really good, I think, for us to have a discussion as a council to look at our debt level and, working with you guys, look at a plan to start reducing it. Because I do think, you know...
Yeah, it's a good point. It's already built into the system to some extent. There's an automatic mechanism where every time we borrow money, we increase rates by, I think it's 3%, in order to make sure we repay that principal over the 30-year period. So the impact of borrowing an extra 100 million isn't just the interest costs, it's the principal repayment as well. So it's like a double whammy. And that's what I was referring to before, that we could maybe adjust that a little bit to smooth out the direct impact of borrowing, but we can't get rid of it altogether because we do need to keep repaying.
The only other difference to that was the COVID borrowing that was taken out over 5 years, not the usual. So we had some extra, which is why we've specifically, with our surpluses, we've actually repaid that earlier.
But if we had the same debt as ECAN, which I believe they're in debt to about 6 million, we would have so much more that lost interest, if you like, that payment on interest to put back into projects or to pay off our debt. So
yeah, I mean,
I know it's a balance, but I think it's one that we've got to have a serious discussion as a council.
It's always a balance for all councils, in the sense that, I mean, the reason why there is $1.6 billion worth of debt in the LTP is because we need to deliver infrastructure, right? So and also given the last 10 years. So it is a balance. So you can't just say, oh, we're not going to borrow. Well, you can, but you don't deliver capital programs. All we're saying is we need to make sure very clear when we're looking at this in every decision we make, whether it's OPEX or CAPEX, we are borrowing debt to do it. So to balance the interest rate raises, the rates increases.
Well, I'm not proposing to stop that, but we really do need a good understanding of where we are and what the risks are with regards to interest rates. And you just have to look back at the global financial crisis. Yeah. A whole lot of people bet against the, hence
why we're saying we will be here every month.
I know that Venezuela Tahi, we're still holding a debt from way back with the AMI Stadium, which is at a huge interest rate, which was locked in then, which was thought to be a good idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, the being made aware of, keeping our governance eyes across, being informed of any developing risks, that's exactly why this report's going to be coming monthly.
Happy to do that.
All right, thank you. Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. last time the OCR went up by 0.25%, I think you came and said it's going to cost us 5.5 mil more in just interest because of that. If I got that right, say 5 mil, round it up, down.
5 million, but not just because of the 0.25, because it depends on what our debt is. But
So if it's just gone up 0.25 yesterday, that means it's another 5 mil.
The 5.5 was over the year, so it's based taking into account. So that was the annual plan, right?
Yes.
So on FY23, so that was taking into account what our forecast debt was in new debt, and where we think the OCR is going based on forecast interest rates. So it's not just going up 0.25 means 5.5 million. It was
Right.
taking about where we think in that financial year 23 based on our forecast, which will take into account predictions on where the OCR will go. But it's not, you can't compare, it's not like for like what you're suggesting.
No, yeah, thank you.
It's important as well that when we're doing these long-term projections, we need to build in anticipated movements in future interest rates. So it's not going to affect us for the whole LTP period, because to a large extent we're anticipating this increase anyway. It's just happened faster than expected.
And anticipating when we're going to borrow the debt.
Yeah.
So the timing of the capital program is absolutely fundamental to this.
Yep. All of these are good conversations to be having and good things for us to be thinking about. No question about it. Any further questions? Sam?
Only just one. It's more just to, obviously everyone's benefit to, you're looking also at reducing our working capital as well, aren't you, to minimise that
Correct.
sort of short-term borrowing that we need.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's one
And
of
that
the
will
things
have an
we're
additional
using.
saving to people as well.
Correct. Yeah, so it's using, because we've already pre-funded some debt repayments this year.
Yeah.
But we are carrying quite a high level of working capital, which we will reduce to prudent levels. So to actually minimise that impact on the increase.
Perfect. No, that's great. I'll look forward to seeing this each month.
I should point out as well that because of who we are, just to clarify, because of who we are, that holding big working capital like that doesn't actually cost us an enormous amount. There is an efficiency reason for scaling it down, but there's also operational tidiness. It's just a lot cleaner to make decisions when we're managing things a little tighter. So we won't say huge cost savings, unfortunately, but we will see a safer management.
But am I right in thinking, though, that given, like you've said, the long-term projection of interest rates, we kind of knew where they were, well, as we could, but it's that short-term where we're being basically dealt to because of that OCR increase.
Yeah, quite right.
Yeah. So as much as that long-term might not save us as much, it may help us in the short term.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay, so, Jimmy. Oh, you're happy to move? Yeah. All right, so Jimmy's moving, Aaron's seconding. Is there any debate? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now let's adjourn for a morning tea break and come back at 11:30. We've got 2 more open agenda items to do and then the public excluded. So let's come back at 11:30. Call the meeting back to order, and if we move straight to item 12, the draft submission on the proposed Waimakariri district plan. So we've got the report and attachments. So yeah, welcome to the table. Are there comments that you wanted to make on this report, and then we'll move to questions?
Kia ora koutou. Just a really brief introduction. I'm Jasmine Mowat. I've got Anita Hansbury here and Mark Stevenson from the planning team. We're asking today for you to approve our draft submission on the proposed Waimakariri district plan. We acknowledge that Finance and Performance is not the usual committee for planning related submissions, but due to the time constraints, this committee suited best, and you do have the delegation to consider and approve this submission today. So we appreciate you making the time on your agenda. We have included some changes since a previous draft was circulated to the council. We've added in statistics as requested on the number of commuters to and from Waimakariri each day. There are approximately 8,000 commuters each day, which is about 32% of their working population comes to Christchurch each day for work. We've also added in a paragraph about covenants and another paragraph in support of the proposed Kāinga Nohoanga zone as well. So really the proposed Waimakariri district plan, yesterday you might have seen an article in the press about increased housing development, potentially greenfields there. That's of course all in the context of further changes from central government, such as the National Policy Statement on Urban Development and the new Resource Management Amendment Bill that's before committee at the moment. So that might change the context for Waimakariri District again with the development of their district plan, but it's all TBC, so we're submitting as business as usual, acknowledging that the context could change between now and then. So any questions, comments? I've got the planning experts here beside me if you've got any questions specifically on the submission, but thank you again.
Great. Thank you very much. So questions, Yanni?
Can you just highlight what comments we've made in regards to social and affordable housing?
There was a section on covenants in there as requested from the first draft, which is in paragraph 8. Paragraph 8. The council notes the development covenants can limit intensification in some areas and are contrary to wider intensification outcomes. Also notes the development of community social housing and affordable housing types are limited by covenants.
I just feel like, I don't know, like we signed up to the Future Urban Development Settlement Patterns work, the FUDs or whatever it was called, and there was a social and affordable housing action plan, and that was supposed to inform the district plan reviews for Selwyn and Waimak, but it just doesn't feel like anything's been done. So I just wonder if we could maybe be a little bit more in terms of our submission, be a little bit more referencing what happened in terms of that process. I mean, I appreciate it was delayed, probably maybe because of COVID, maybe because of other reasons, but it seems like the idea of getting inclusionary zoning or financial contributions through district planning or enabling some sort of mechanism to enable social and affordable housing should be a lot more explicit.
We could, to address that point, we could include a sentence to the effect that council seeks that the actions from the social and affordable housing action plan are implemented through the district plan as appropriate.
Yeah, actually, I don't think the problem is they haven't agreed those actions yet. I don't know, people on that committee might know more than me. I don't know where it's got to, but I guess we would just want to see their plan be very clear about how it could actually enable more social and affordable housing.
Within the housing provision framework.
Yeah. If there's support from the council, we can add in that point. This is your submission ultimately.
Right. And maybe I mean same for Selwyn, but maybe just reference that report action or that report. It was the report into getting the report action and milestones.
I mean, it just seems to me that there is nothing in this plan that stops the council from developing any of its land as social or affordable housing. So this is a land use document. The one thing that affects the land use are the covenants. So it is appropriate to reference the covenants, but you could note in that 8, noting that this was an outcome sought from the from our space in terms of the commitment to social and affordable housing and removing constraints within
because the plan
environment.
Because the social and affordable housing plan isn't finalised yet, so you can't implement
Yeah.
actions from that into the district plan
That's
because it's not
right.
done yet. So
But if we reference where it was raised in that
Reference
future
where it
development
was
strategy, our space piece,
And inclusionary zoning's been around since 2007. It's been an outstanding action for the urban development
And
partners.
us.
So,
And us.
you know, like that's been in action. So, you know, I personally think we should be saying we expect them to have inclusionary zoning in terms of if they're going to free up more
Sorry, can you
space.
describe what inclusionary zoning
So if they're freeing up more space for development, then a set percentage or value needs to go back into social and affordable housing outcomes.
I think we can reference the action plan, but recognise it's still yet to be finalised. I think it would perhaps be premature to expect implementation of it, including inclusionary zoning, until such time as that's
but
finalised.
that picks up the view that we expressed at that time and brings it into this process as well. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or points that people want to raise on this? So Sarah will move. Do we have a seconder? Leanne will second. So moved by Sarah, seconded by Leanne. Is there any debate? Phil?
Yeah, I think it's good that we're all looking at what we can submit to Waimak District Council and or Selwyn as well, because they, as Leanne said, they've got shed loads of land. We have got to start looking at rezoning some of our land here, because that's why people are moving out there, because we haven't got enough. I can lay my hands on, I can name or look at 3,000 sections that are being built in Horswell, and it's the only place in Christchurch that we can go. We have got other areas that we should make sure that we actively look at rezoning. I know we've got the 3 metres high or 3 stories high, 3 sections on houses on a section, and that's good for some people, but we have still got land that we can use rather than, because Horswell will fill up to the point that we can't do any more. So I don't think we should lose sight of rezoning more of our dirt. Thank you.
Sarah?
Thanks. Actually, just in response, I think that we've got a really clear infrastructure boundary that was put together some time ago, and a huge amount of land that was rezoned within that infrastructure boundary after the earthquakes. But what we really don't want in Christchurch is more sprawl. More sprawl leads to more vehicle emissions. More sprawl leads to fewer people in the CBD. What we need to do is intensify and become a more dense city over time. And the fact that we have a really strong infrastructure boundary in place, which actually is not a boundary of our choosing, although we were party of it. It is an infrastructure boundary that's put in place through the ECAN's regional policy documents, and so not one that we can change. Cheers.
Any further comments? So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we come to the item 13, the notice of motion. So this is moved by Sarah Templeton, seconded by Mike Davidson. So Sarah, I'll invite you to introduce this item.
Thank you. So I wasn't aware that the removal of library book fines was a thing that was happening across the world and across the country until actually just after the long-term plan, when I saw in a tweet from Pippa Combe that Auckland City Council had decided to do just that. Since then, some digging around and some talking to the Auckland Library staff had led to a stack of information and background information. The knowledge that a whole pile of cities across the country were doing it as well, including just a couple of weeks ago Dunedin. Our neighbours in Selwyn and Waimakariri no longer have library book fines either. Libraries are the cornerstone of democracy. Information's free and equally available to everyone. It's one of the last places that you can go inside in a city where no one expects you to spend money, and that you feel welcome. But it's currently not true in Christchurch. We've got barriers that are currently discourage or actively block members of our community from accessing the books and services that their rates pay for. So since I've raised this, I've had a couple of people, more than a couple of people, get in contact with some stories. So I'd just like to read you one ahead of the rest of it. Dear Sarah, I'm so pleased that you raised this issue. I recently returned my books 8 days late. I'm in the middle of a family crisis and I missed some emails from the library. Now they've put the debt collectors onto me for $58.60 and limited my daughter's accounts to 2 books each until I pay. My daughters are 11 and 14 and it makes me so sad that the library has rejected them when they needed it most. I did try once to pay my fine online, but it isn't a service the library offers. It's hard to get into a physical library with work hours. I didn't find out till I was at the library with Miss 11. We'd chosen special books and went to check them out. I found my account was blocked. Then Miss 11 found hers was limited. We went to the counter to find out what was going on, and that was when we found out that they'd limited her account too, when she'd done nothing wrong. It was heartbreaking watching her return her specially selected books. What kind of library does that to a young child who's keen to read? When I questioned the library on their policy of punishing children for their parents' mistakes, they said that they did it on behalf of ratepayers. They did it to stop parents whose account had been blocked checking out books using their children's account. But this really only punishes the innocent children, the children who possibly need the library most as a place of safety and escapism. I don't have $58.60 to spare. How many Christchurch children currently have their accounts limited because of the mistakes their parents have made? It's a disgrace that they did this to her on behalf of ratepayers. What are we teaching our children with this policy? And that's because as a city council sitting around this table, we require every year the libraries to collect these fees, these fines. And it's going to be our choice, hopefully, if we ask for the report on it, as to whether we stop asking the libraries to collect them. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got the notice of motion. We've also got a memo from staff in front of us. It's worth noting that what we're doing today is simply noting that other councils have taken the approach that's proposed and requesting a report. The substantive debate on this would come on the back of the report when we'd got the full information in front of us. So today isn't the debate on whether we do this or not. Today is the question of whether we want a report brought so that we can have that debate. Leanne.
The debate is now. Yep.
Unless there are questions on the memo. If there are questions on the memo, they are in order or not? Given that we've, I mean, all right, can somebody tell me whether questions on the staff memo that's attached are in order or not?
I think we should.
I mean, given that we've got a memo from staff in front of us, I would have expected if any questions were going to be asked on that, they would be to staff. But I need some guidance on this because, you know, there's a suggestion that questions on the memo are not in order because it's a notice of motion. Equally, we've got information in front of us that people have got questions about.
Actually, yeah, I've just had some good advice from the back of the room. Is we did have questions on the stadium notice of motion. So.
Right. Well, let's. All right. So, Jimmy, you've got a question on the memo. Oh, to Sarah. Right.
Your notice motion focus on the adults plus the children, or just the children because they have no income, you know, they couldn't afford to pay the fine. Yeah. But adults, they have income, you know. But also, I'm concerned this fine, library fine, whether part of council library policy by law or not. This is my question.
Okay. So it's currently a council policy to collect the fines on late books for adults. So children are already, they don't have any fines if children are late. Yeah. But even if adults are fined, lots of adults can't afford the fines either, and they don't come back to the library anymore. But it's a council policy; it's not law or anything. Yeah. So all we're doing today is asking for a report with all of that information in it, so that then we can make the proper decision.
Okay, thank you.
So there are questions that people might have that'll be more appropriately asked when we've got the report in front of us than today, when all we're doing is noting what some other councils have done and calling for that report. Yep. So it's important to distinguish that. Okay. So we can now move. So we've got, this is moved by Sarah and seconded by Mike. Is there any debate? Leanne?
I really strongly support this. I think it's important that we get the advice that we need in order to make a rational decision. And I was very, I wasn't aware of this as an issue until it was kind of brought to our attention as a potential for including within the annual plan. And then it did occur to me when Sarah moved this notice of motion or talked about bringing a notice of motion, that it actually makes sense to do it earlier, because it's not necessarily going to be the single focus of the annual plan, and it shouldn't be. This is a standalone subject which we could address as a council before then. What has struck me is that both of our neighbours do this. So Waimakariri and Selwyn, they're two of the ones that do it. And it will be really interesting as part of the report to get very explicit advice from them about the impact that it's had on uptake of library services, because my quick understanding of the situation, that's why I'm looking forward to the report staying firmly within the bounds of the debatable motion. I was very pleased to see that in fact their initial experience has been that uptake has increased and that more books are being taken out, and that in fact the way people are actually returning books that they've had sitting at the back of a bookshelf but haven't dared to wander into a library again, that's also occurred as well. So I congratulate Sarah for bringing this forward as an item for us to discuss, but to get a full report that enables us to look at all of the pros and cons, and I suspect the pros are going to far outweigh the cons. So thank you very much for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you. Melanie?
Thanks, Sarah. And it was interesting you pointed about the library hours. So I'm glad that we didn't reduce them last long-term plan. And I was, it actually made me think, I was impressed during our long-term plan how we had quite a few people come along and do poems. So I found a poem online, and there is one, and it's quite good, so I'm going to read it out. Overdues. What do I do? What do I do? This library book is 42 years overdue. I admit that it's mine, but I can't pay the fine. Should I turn it in or hide it again? What do I do? What do I do?
I can't beat a poem, and I won't try to. But look, I'm supportive of getting the report and looking at it as well. Probably the thing for me is the personal responsibility aspect. But I am keen to see the pros and cons of how that plays out. I guess the other things I'd be really keen to see, again, just to give us that proper advice, would be the other options. So whether there's more of a compassionate consideration ground that may sit with the head of libraries and the like. And also, I guess, some more innovative ways of how we recover the debt. So it may be that we don't actually need to post them out. It might be that email's better or the like. So look, I don't know. I'm just putting them out there so that I'd be keen to see them when they come back. But I mean, for a relatively small amount of money, I think it just would be useful to understand whether we're looking at multiple options as opposed to just the one. So it'd be useful when that comes back.
Thank you. So who have we got? Phil, Aaron, Anne and Tim.
Thanks. And Sarah, this is sort of a question. Sarah, if I read somewhere, I can't find it. Is it, did we
We've moved
Ask
beyond,
it.
we've moved
Ask
beyond
your debate and I'll
questions.
see if I can
Okay, the
respond.
debate. Okay, it's not. This is not a question. Why? Okay, in debate. Why are we not just voting on this now? That's a question as well. Instead of wasting a whole lot of staff's time writing up reports, if we're all happy with it, why don't we just do it?
Oh, Jim, you just put three.
Let me count the
Oh,
ways.
sorry.
I'll do that in my writer reply at the end.
I'm sure if Ian Thompson was in the room, he would give us some reasons why.
He would
And it's
tell
around
you.
having the right information in front of us. So I'm now answering the question that you shouldn't have asked. It's about having
Thank
the
you
right
very much. Thank you very much.
information in front of us to make a decision. Who is next? Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, and quite well said, Phil. You'll be a very unorthodox mayor. But might not be a bad thing. Thank you, Sarah, for bringing this. I think it makes sense. Let's at least just see what it looks like. I'm not a big fan of fines. They're there to drive behaviour, and sometimes there's unintended consequences, like the mayor said. And I think there's other fines we have in the city we could look at after this one as well, that we could potentially get rid of to drive some positive behaviours. Maybe. Good luck.
Thank you. Anne and then Tim.
Kia ora, thank you, and delighted that we are addressing this issue. Thank you, Sarah, for bringing it to our attention, and really look forward to the report. In a previous role, I would visit homes where there were no books, and if we are going to be a city of opportunity and equity, we need to provide the opportunity for people to have access to reading. So this will be a terrific step along the way, and it sounds like it will be something that we will all be supportive of once we get that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Sarah, for bringing this. I think it's outstanding. As a slow reader myself, I gave up for a while with the library, as there was no way I could finish a book within the time frame that was out. There's a number of games that are like that as well, but we won't go there. But I just think if there's no fine, there's no cost in recovering it. So I think that I always wondered if it was actually cost more to get the fine paid. But in the report, it'd be great to know that a lost or missing book is not the same as a late book. So we've got to be conscious of the true costs of what we're doing. So I'm really looking forward to this and totally support it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also support this notice of motion, and thank you, Sarah, bring this to the table. That's a practical issue, particularly regarding the library. We are encouraging people can borrow those books rather than put on the shelf. However, the paragraph 2, very, very good. That's in response to the staff, the memo, particular conclusion. Because as a councillor, we to make decision, we need to gather the more sufficient information to make decision. Then, so I think that's a balance this one. Yes, I'm happy to go ahead.
Celeste.
I'm just want to echo what everyone else has said. Well done, Sarah. I think it's really great that we're doing that, particularly during COVID. I think there's a lot of people, I always seem to forget to get any books out of the library, but, having access to libraries, particularly when people are stuck at home with kids, I think it is a really important service. And also, in terms of mitigating people's stress levels at the moment, having fines for particularly those that can't afford to pay is just one thing we can do to help people. So, yeah, well done for bringing this forward.
So, equally, I'd thank Sarah for raising this issue, and to Mike for supporting Sarah in doing that by seconding the notice of motion. Clearly, this raises some issues around some inclusivity issues, social outcomes, and some probably unintended outcomes that we'll become a lot more aware of when we see the report. Whilst I appreciate the eagerness of some to rush to a decision today, I think it's fair to say that we do need the report so that we can make a proper, robust and well-informed decision. I would expect the report would reference the experience of other councils, noting that there are other councils around the country that have implemented this. I'm also very keen to know what the financial impacts would be, and particularly around timing. Because if we do determine that there are benefits to doing this, I think we'd be eager to realise them as quickly as possible. So that speaks to some commentary on timing out of the normal annual plan LTP cycle as well. So I think there are some good things that we expect to see in that report. I imagine staff have got a lot of that information already, and then we can move pretty quickly to a decision at that time. So I acknowledge the fact that this has been brought, and I'm strongly supportive of getting the report. Sarah, did you want to say something to close the debate?
I will. The personal responsibility issue has been one that's been raised by a few, and I get it. However, we're all human, life is complicated, and things get in the way of many of our good intentions. So here's another quick story. Charlotte got a $60 fine while in hospital earlier this year. It wasn't a priority of mine at the time to go to the library to pay it off in person because there's no option to pay online. So the charges were sent to the debt collection agency, and additional fees were charged for admin and mailing out a paper letter. When I was well enough to get into the library and try and talk to someone about why I couldn't return my library books by their due date and see if I could get the charges wiped, they couldn't offer me any assistance and instead gave me a business card and suggested I contact someone within CCC. Well, here I am at CCC. I'd have loved to make the decision today. I think it's a no-brainer. But we do need to make sure that Ian's okay with the process and that Sam's okay with the information. I'm looking forward to the report coming and would love for it to be a Christmas present for all the city, if at all possible.
So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you.
No.
All right, so next we've got the resolution to exclude the public, as set out on pages 170 and 171 in the agenda. I'm happy to move that. Sam will second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. And then if somebody can just give me a thumbs up when we are no longer live streaming.